Welcome into the I-80 Club National Fun League, week number 13 in the NFL. And every 3 weeks, Mike Schaefer of Husker 24/7 Sports and I get together to talk about the National Football League and what's going on with our favorite team. Schaef, the football, surprisingly for both of us, is good. Have we had a chance to say that at all this year? It's usually just been me saying, wow, the Vikings look pretty solid. The Cowboys are garbage. But it seems like this week, the gods look down upon us, though they almost didn't watching your game yesterday.
Yeah, well, sometimes you play a team that gives you a good game and you have to squeak out a comeback win. And that's essentially what happened for the Vikings on Sunday, which was fantastic. But we don't want to bury the lead. The Cowboys are not dead. Cooper Rush and the Cowboys, are they something to watch here? Or is it just, they played the Giants?
I mean, you're the better person to answer the question. Are they something to watch? Would you say that they are a team that you now are saying, you know what? They're on TV because they're going to be on TV a ton. They always are. Are you intrigued to watch to literally watch them as a football product in the final month of the regular season?
Not particularly, because I don't buy that they're going to rip off a bunch of wins. They're playing somewhat better. It coincides with also playing the Giants. Now, they did get a nice win against the Commanders a couple weeks ago.
Yes.
So there is that. You don't want to take that away from them. And the game against Houston, the score looked different than what probably the actual gameplay should have dictated. I don't know what their upcoming schedule is. I'm pretty sure they have the Eagles another time in there.
Yeah. They got Cincinnati next Monday. A week from today, they have Cincinnati.
Okay. So that's kind of a fun. Nobody's going to go to the playoffs, but we might see 1,000 points in a single game.
Yes.
The way the Bengals play defense, every one of their games is sort of watchable, regardless of who the other team is, because you just don't know what you're going to see. There's probably a lot of CeeDee Lamb owners that are excited for next Monday in the fantasy worlds.
It does suck though that I don't think you're that wrong, but then it's like, but Cooper Rush is playing quarterback. Like, if they win next week, and my joke over the last few weeks has been, oh my gosh, if they can win 1 or 2 games in a row, they're going to show up on the In the Hunt graphic again, and they have. They're on the graphic. They're 5-7 now. If they're able, Schaef, to pull off a win versus Cincinnati at home, which would be their second straight home win after winning 16 in a row the last couple of years, suddenly then they're at Carolina, and it's like, oh my gosh, is this team who we all buried suddenly going to get to 7-7 and try to rope me back in? With the Bucs, the Eagles, and the Commanders to come after that. I'm not expecting it. I think that Cincinnati is definitely up a weight class from what they saw versus the Giants. I'm still confused kind of on what to make versus the Commanders game, though maybe that's just a team in year one under a new coaching staff and certainly with a rookie quarterback. That is the win this year. Even more so, I think, than the Steelers win, that it's just kind of perplexing because Dallas shut them down. They really played well, especially on the defensive side of the ball, and that's not something that we have been able to say. So Parsons is back, right? Parsons has played the last, I think, 4 games, and he has 5.5 sacks. He's doing a really good job. And it's like, oh, man, if they would have had him all year, maybe the defense could look good. But, Schaef, he was on the field for the Saints game. He was on the field for the Ravens game. He was on the field I guess he wouldn't have been on the field for the Lions game. So he was on the field, though, for those 2 games early when they got blown off the field. So I guess I'm frustrated and confused. Like, Dak being out for the majority of the year is what it is. But the defense taking such a step back in the early part of the season, that's something that I don't really feel like I can totally figure out at this moment in time on December 2nd.
I think what it is they're just sort of a mediocre team, and what you get is inconsistent results. Like, you're getting a team that 1 week is one version, and another week, just based on the game plan that an opposing coach will have, they'll look like something else. I don't know that they are good enough to hang with teams that have explosive athletes, on the outside. Like, the one thing about the Commanders, if you can kind of take away Terry McLaurin, who else is beating you? Like, I just don't believe, and maybe it's unfair, but they're running back Brian Robinson. I'm not super, he's fine. Like, and Jaden McDaniels is good, or Jaden Daniels is good. I just don't know that there's so much on that offense that if you're able to get a good game plan on Terry McLaurin, can they beat you with everything else? I'm just not sure. Now, I was concerned about the Commanders in a survivor pool setting, stayed away from them, and they absolutely smacked the Titans, who, despite just being the Titans and you assume is a terrible team, have kind of like a good defense. And so you I wasn't expecting a 42-point effort from a team that looks like they struggle sometimes offensively. So, yeah, I don't know what you make of that, but there's just several games this year where obviously you have the opening game of that for the entire season, the way the 49ers just curb stomped the Jets, and you're like, wow, no Super Bowl hangover for these 49ers. And now we're in this week, and they barely have anyone playing left for them. And it seemed like a big win to me in week 2. And at the same time, I was like, the Vikings kind of kicked their ass. You know why they kind of kicked their ass? The 49ers aren't good.
No.
And you and I, we were on that bandwagon before the year. And so I think, Josh, we get to take a victory lap. And so before we get, two into our own teams, we get to do a little bit of a victory lap on being out on the 49ers ahead of the consensus.
Hey, shout out to us, man. Shout out to us on being correct on the 49ers. And, look, most years I am a believer in the Super Bowl hangover. I very much think that is real, and I very much think that was real in terms of how the 49ers lost, because it's not, in my opinion, Schaef, that it was just about last year, but it was also that they had gotten to the NFC Championship the year before, and then they felt like they had the game taken away from them because Brock Purdy gets hurt on the first drive of the game, and so they felt like we got a raw deal here, and so they come back with a vengeance last year, and then they lose the game at the end of the first overtime of the Super Bowl. And so I'm very much a believer in that. And I also, and this is kind of unfair. Maybe it's unfair. I don't know, Schaef. You tell me. I am also a believer in the 49ers had some pretty solid injury luck last year. And the 49ers usually are a team that is banged up over the course of a season for whatever reason, right? Maybe they just practice too hard. They play such a physical brand of football. And I think that can help them at times. But I also think that it can hurt them at times. But they also have an aging running back who has been banged up at various points throughout his career. Of course he wasn't going to be able to make it through an entire regular season healthy again. They stink. That game, I know that they've lost now to 2 teams in a row for sure that are playoff teams in the Packers and Bills. And maybe you add in a third in the Seahawks. Before that, they beat the Bucks, who maybe will also be a playoff team. But, dude, they just don't look very good. When they've played the true contenders this year, the Vikings, they lost by 6, and you can speak to that. That game was
that should have been, if Aaron Jones isn't 2024 fumbling Aaron Jones, that's a 20-point win.
So they lose. I'm with you. They lose the game. It says 6. They didn't lose by 6. They lost by 10 to the Chiefs. They lost by 28 to the Packers. They lost by 25 to the Bills. And again, the last 2, you could say those games should have actually been like yours, even bigger blowouts. They've taken a step back. It'll be interesting to see what they do in terms of retooling. And obviously, they're coming upon Brock Purdy's contract and what they're going to have to do there. But my God, what a dominating performance by the Bills last night. Oh, Matt says, bust out your Josh was right shirt. I would love to wear a shirt that says Josh was right. But last night, man, you and I are very much a part of the Bills hive. We are a believer in them. I tweeted about them last night, and I got the usual, yeah, they're only good in the regular season. And I'm just man, Peyton Manning was only good in the regular season until he won the Super Bowl too. It's just, I think that this team is gonna make it out of the AFC. I think that we're seeing that maybe the Ravens are not the class of the conference like we thought that they could be. And then I think the NFC now it's very much wide open compared to the last time that we spoke, because I think the Eagles suddenly have emerged on that side of the bracket as well.
Yeah, I feel like with the Bills, it just, sort of almost kind of like the 49ers, if you just keep playing really good football, eventually it's going to break your way. And there's just something about their ability to replace whenever they've had injury luck kind of go against them, whenever they've had things that haven't gone right. They've just been able to step up and figure it out. They do it without the best wide receivers. They do it with, now all of a sudden James Cook looks like he's a real weapon. And then Ray Davis, the backup running back, looks like he's a weapon. And you always have Josh Allen, who seems to kind of like this comparison gets tossed around a lot. Kind of like Brett Favre, he makes the receivers better. He creates a Javon Walker and then a Jordy Nelson and those sorts of things because he throws guys open. And I cannot say enough good things about Josh Allen. He's my favorite player in the league. They're my favorite team to watch. They have been for years. Every time the Bills are in a marquee game, every time I'm not just glued to the Bills are always in a quad box for me at a noon window if the Vikings are also playing. They are a team I want to watch all of the time. I have them this year in a wins pool. I have 27 wins already through 13 weeks in a wins pool. I don't know that I will ever have a better start to a season in a wins pool with the Bills, Seahawks, and
you
Vikings.
personally are the NFC North of the wins pool, if you will.
Yeah, it's fantastic. I love it. It's great. And then I love watching the Bills. And I told you I have a take on this that you are going to enjoy because I think you've already experienced it to a degree. Chiefs fans are so pissed right now. The Bills look like the most fun team in the league. They have the best quarterback in the league. Chiefs fans who have to find reasons to be aggrieved and do the us versus them, and nobody believes in us with their 11-1 football team and their Patrick Mahomes, Andy Reid, unbeatable combination in the playoffs. Right now, Chiefs fans are just being as petulant as possible because they're angry. People don't believe that Patrick Mahomes is the best quarterback in the league anymore. No one enjoys watching their shit team wallow through game after game and then come out with a win due to bizarre circumstance. I think the Chiefs are really good. I think beating them in the playoffs is going to be really hard.
Yes.
I just find myself enjoying the fact that they are just sitting off to the side, pissed off at 11-1, or doing the, we'll see what's going to happen in the playoffs, man. Because this is what they do. They have to invent the boogeyman. They can't be like everybody else and be like, man, Josh Allen's crazy. This is awesome.
Yeah.
Oh, they get all the calls. Nothing ever goes wrong for the Bills. We'll see what happens in January, man. That's what it's about. I love it. I love it.
As you say that, and I don't know if D'Lo is a Chiefs fan, but D'Lo writes, Lamar and Allen are having great seasons. Neither mean much of anything unless they do it in January. So
that's such bullshit. That is bullshit.
Why
do you watch for 8? If it doesn't matter until January, the people listening to this, what the hell are you listening for? It's week 13. Just sit it out. Yeah. Just sit it out and pop in like I would for the NBA playoffs. You want to talk about things that don't matter?
Yeah.
That's a regular season where who gives a shit?
Yeah.
In the NFL, you want to watch because the games are fun. You want to watch fun games. You want to watch things where Josh Allen catches his own touchdown pass because of a lateral and then has an amazing dive in the snow.
In the snow.
Like if it doesn't matter, don't watch. That's how I feel about it.
Yeah, and I'm with you. I think you said it. Like it's essentially, to make a reference to my favorite movie ever, Shawshank Redemption, the idea of pressure over time. Like if you keep showing up and you keep winning, like yes, of course, there are going to be the many examples, right, of the great players who never won a Super Bowl or never got to a Super Bowl. I mean, hell, they had Jim Kelly at the start of the broadcast last night. That was a guy who chipped away pressure over time, years and years and years, and he just never broke through. He never was able to escape the Shawshank prison. I'm a believer that this team that this quarterback can, because I think he's too good to not do so. And I mean, like, here's the question: Are the Bills the best team in the NFL right now? I don't know, but I definitely think that they're the best team in the AFC because I watch what the Chiefs are doing, and it is impressive, man. To win 11 games and however many of them, 7 or 8 of them are coming down to the last minute. Like, it is very, very, very impressive that they continue to find a way to do it. But man, like if they were a college team and they were doing this and you have to pick and like find the warts, you'd say, ooh, but they're doing it against like lesser competition, right? It's one thing if they're doing this every week against, and I know like they did it against the Ravens back in all the way in week 1. So like, I'm not saying that they've only done this against bad teams, but like to have the game against the Raiders come down to the wire, just like all of these games have to keep coming. I feel like if they played the Cowboys on Sunday, it'd be like, oh, well, here we go. It's going to come down to the wire again because that's just what happens. I think that the Bills are the better team. I think they're the best team in the AFC. In terms of the best team in the NFL, I think that's a really interesting question right now because the Lions didn't look great on Thanksgiving, but they are mostly a wagon. And, dude, I said this last night. I think that the Eagles now, this version is better than the one that went to the Super Bowl a couple of years ago. And then you throw in the Vikings, you throw in the Packers. Like, it's odd. I feel like, and maybe I'm just giving too much disrespect to the Ravens given they lost to the Eagles, but you and I have been so high, and everybody else has, on the AFC the last few years, and now I'm like, crap, is the NFC like the better conference, and it's like not even close right now? I don't know. What do you think?
It's hard to say because 3 of your best teams in the NFC just went up against the AFC South. Like, how many wins have I've thought about this a lot lately. Like the NFC North basically drew the AFC South and the NFC West, and the NFC West has a bunch of scrappy teams, but like they're not complete teams, and they can beat you on any given week, like the Rams did against the Vikings. But they're also just a little bit, things just have to break completely right for those teams. None of them are juggernauts. And I think people would agree with that. Like I like Seattle. I think they're a playoff team.
Yeah.
They're not someone that I would take up against, if they're playing. I think they have a chance to beat the Lions, but it's going to have to take a perfect game from them. They lost by 15 points. They'd have a chance against the Eagles. It's going to have to take a perfect, it's just like, things have to just break right in those situations against those other top teams. With the NFC North, I think they've been able to pad a bunch of wins against, so-so teams. Whereas in the AFC, they really all kind of beat each other up. Like, think about the Bills' schedule. Like, they get all of these good teams. Think about the schedule the Ravens have played.
It's
They've
ridiculous.
Faced everybody. The only one that they don't have are the Lions that I can think of. So, it's just for me, like the record is one thing, but it's also you have some schedules that are a little bit imbalanced in terms of who they have to go against. And so I still think I would take the champion coming out of the AFC. I still think the Ravens, despite that loss to the Eagles, are a good team. Now, I have a lot of questions about Justin Tucker these days.
Dude, oh my gosh.
You can't like rely on him anymore. It makes it a different version of Baltimore. And so that's definitely something to watch, as we get to the playoffs. Just to finish the whole thought with the Chiefs. Again, they're obviously a good football team. The thing of it is, like, when you're in that dynasty mode and you started the whole thing off looking like the most fun team in the NFL with a dynamic offense, and now you're just a defensive-oriented team that ekes out games, like, you're not fun. Like, you might be good and you might end up being the Super Bowl champion, but good Lord, compared to all of these other teams, like, would you rather watch the Eagles or the Packers? Or not the Eagles or the Packers, the Eagles or the Chiefs? You'd rather watch the Eagles.
Yeah.
Because of Saquon Barkley and because, Jalen Hurts, and even the defense for the Eagles seems to be sort of fascinating right now because they have all of the college superstars that nobody thought to draft or wouldn't take as high, who turns out really good players in college might also be really good players in the NFL, regardless of, if it's a white defensive back or if it's a short Nakobe Dean. So it's one of those things I like every time the Eagles are on TV, I'm like, oh, they have this guy, and this guy. Oh, and they didn't have to use that high of a pick on any of them. Oh, okay,
it's crazy.
That's great.
Yeah, I'm still getting mad. Dude, I'm still getting mad about the Saquon Barkley contract and just how ridiculous, it is. It's like, what are we talking about here? Like, we swung
most explosive running back in the NFL, the dumbest organization in the league's like, yeah, we don't want him back.
Yeah.
What are we going to do with that?
Yeah, one of the smartest organizations in the league goes after him. It's like we swung so far from the running backs don't matter, into that category, and it's like, oh, okay, so you're getting him for whatever it is, $13 million a year. It's like running. I think people missed the idea of value, and it's not running backs don't matter. It's running backs aren't worth $25 million a year, but running backs are worth $13 million a year when it's the best running back in the NFL, and he gets one of the best offensive lines in the NFL, and two of the best receivers on the outside, and one of the best tight ends. It's like, oh, awesome. Like, it is. I am very frustrated watching this football team because they are really, really good. And they win in a way that I think is going to translate to January. And I think I said this to John recently, but I could hear Kevin Burkhardt in my head saying like, oh, and the Lions are down by 14 already in Detroit in the NFC Championship as Saquon Barkley rips off a 40-yard touchdown run, and I'm just miserable because for the second time in 3 years, Philadelphia is going to go to the Super Bowl. The thing that I'm holding out hope for is that Kellen Moore, who always turned into a pumpkin at the end of the regular season and into the playoffs, once again, his play calling goes to shit at the end of the regular season and into the playoffs because they have all of the pieces, especially if all those wide receivers are healthy. And Smith missed a game yesterday, and they still were fine. They were moving up and down the field in the second half versus the Ravens, who admittedly do not have a defense like they did a year ago.
Yeah, I'm annoyed by that whole context that you just built because it puts the Lions in the NFC Championship game. What the hell are we doing here?
I figured you would. I almost said the Vikings just to placate to you.
No, that's okay.
I don't believe it. I don't believe that the Vikings will make the NFC Championship game.
That's fine. They're the only 10-2 team in the league that everyone wonders if they're good or not, despite the fact they're 10-2.
They are 10-2.
Look like a 79 point differential. Well, I wonder if they're good. Do we think they can win games?
Hey, to be fair, I didn't say I don't think they're good. I just said I don't think they're going to make it to the NFC Championship game.
We'll find out.
They get another win yesterday, Schaef, versus a either a playoff or a playoff adjacent team. They fall down early. They come back. They get the win. They are now 10-2. They're tied for the second best record in the NFL, but they're all the way down at the 5 seed because, of course, the NFL, like college football, for the record, for all the college football playoff people out there, because they seed by winning a conference. How are we feeling right now? It's so fun to check in with you on this podcast every few weeks because we discuss like, hey, they've still won a bunch more games in this recent stretch now since we spoke. I remember we the last time we did this, we were going into that, what was it, the Titans, Bears, Cardinals stretch, and we were just like, okay, they got the wins over the Colts and the Jags, so they rebounded well after the losses to the Rams and the Lions, and we were like, you got to probably go 3-0, and then after that, you get through this stretch, and you have some intriguing teams, but maybe not the best teams in the league outside of the Lions in Week 18. Let's see what's going on there. No, the games really didn't look very pretty, but you got the dubs. How are we feeling a few weeks later?
I still feel pretty good. I mean, I think they're a difficult team for anybody to play. I actually thought I came into that game a little worried about Kyler Murray and his ability to scramble. What impressed me about the Cardinals was not the offense. Their defense is suddenly like kind of salty. And you forget like, oh, they went and hired the Eagles defensive coordinator from a few years ago. They've got a lot of young players that are kind of intriguing. They flipped that thing over. And then you look up, and before the Vikings game, like their previous 4 games, I don't know that they had allowed like more than 13 points in any of those games. And so they're now like this weird defensive-oriented team with kind of a scary Russell Wilson imposter quarterback in Kyler Murray. He just doesn't have like 2014, 2015 Russell Wilson had the ability when he scrambled out of pressure to hit the kill shot on top of it. Kyler Murray has the ability to avoid the pressure. You don't worry as much that he's going to hit you with the devastating throw at the end of that. Or at least I don't. Like there's just some element that doesn't quite look what it does. Look, how you want. I'll say this. If the Vikings are a 5 and they have to go to Arizona, I'm going to be really nervous for that game because that is not a team I'd like to see again. Like I would rather they're going to play the Seahawks in Seattle here in a few weeks. I'd rather play that. I'd rather any team out of the NFC South right now. Yeah. I would prefer not to see the Cardinals because I think they're playing better football and they're a team that is going to potentially steal a game, against somebody. Like if they end up as a 3, if they end up as a 7, like if the Cardinals have to go to Philly, they're probably not going to win. But man, that is a tough. Like if you're Philly and you're the 2 seed. And the Cardinals are able to jump, the Commanders at the end of the year or whatever it is. That is not a 7 seed that I would want to be seeing right now. I mean, I think
it doesn't seem like a reward, does it? That you're like, cool, we get to watch Kyler Murray run around in our stadium for 3 hours.
That's kind of the difference of this year versus maybe some past is where it feels like, regardless of seed, unless you're catching the NFC South representative, which could be the Falcons, could be the Bucks. I'm high on the Bucks, but they looked bad yesterday. Yeah. And they've got so many injury issues, and the defense is so up and down week to week. It's hard to know what you're going to get from them. Then the Falcons just look terrible at the moment. So outside of that one playoff spot, the other 6 teams all seem like they're going to be at least frisky, with varying degrees of how far you think they can go. But I thought that was a nice win for the Vikings, come from behind the way that they did to get the final touchdown the way they did. Sam Darnold has looked awesome, since that game where everybody wanted to write him off with the Jaguars game because he played poorly. He really did.
Yeah.
Since that point, he played really good football. I don't think he's thrown an interception in the last 3 games. He has 2 comeback wins against the Bears and now the Cardinals. And the Bears wasn't a comeback win, but it was a fourth quarter or overtime game-winning drive win. So it's looking good for Sam Darnold as well. And so I think this Vikings team can play with anybody in the league. I don't know that they're the best team. I definitely feel like they're somewhere in the top 5 or 6 teams, but I think they can play with anybody in the league. I'm confident. There's not a matchup where I'm like, oh, they have no chance. There's certain ones where I think different teams, like I think Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson, their ability to get out in the pocket, that scares me more than Jared Goff, the ability to run. But I like the way that Minnesota's playing right now, and they're healthy. That's the other thing. Like, they finally have everybody back on offense. So you have, if the Bears want to double Justin Jefferson and he only has 30 yards in that game, Jordan Addison's going to have 160 and TJ Hawkinson has 110. And then, Jefferson has 100 yesterday, and they're able to get Addison and Hawkinson the ball in key situations because they're trying to take Jefferson away again. So it's a tough offense when everything's healthy. And right now they're kind of clicking. So that's good. And you get the Falcons and the Bears, and then it's going to get interesting and finish the Seahawks, Packers, and the Lions.
Dude, and so you led right into what I wanted to ask you about, and that was, are you still holding out hope that they can win the division? Because I'm looking at the schedules. Because, dude, the Lions' schedule on paper, I would say right now looks the toughest because they have the Packers on Thursday, and that's a home game. It's in Detroit, and then they have the Bills, and we've already sung their praises. And then they're at Chicago, at San Francisco, and even though the 49ers are what they are, I still think that will be tough enough. And then they finish with your team in Week 18. You, as you just ran through, I don't mean to do the Bill Simmons thing where I just read schedules for 5 minutes, but it's Falcons, Bears, at Seahawks, Packers, at Lions. And then the Packers are at the Lions, they're at the Seahawks, they have the Saints, and they're at the Vikings and at the Bears. So it's like, I would definitely say of those three, the Lions have the toughest schedule, right?
Packers probably have the easiest.
And Packers probably have the easiest. And then and it's interesting because I'm looking at the odds right now. The Lions are the heavy favorites still to win the division, -470. Then the Packers 6-1, then the Vikings 6-1, and then the Packers are 14-1. And I'm guessing some of that, of course, is that the tiebreakers right now are already very much in Detroit's favor because they've wins over both of them. If they get a win on Thursday, I mean, in terms of the division and Green Bay being in the mix,
I think Green Bay's almost out.
They would be done if they lose on Thursday. Yeah. Whereas you're just hanging out and you're right there with them. And who have you lost to? You've lost to the Lions and you've lost to an AFC team. And then
the Rams are the NFC team.
Oh, that's right. You lost to the Rams. My bad. And then
Lions lost to the Bucks. So I don't know what happens if they're 15-1 and the Vikings are 14-2 going into that final game. Yeah, I don't know. I think other results would have to be all the way in for us to know if that would come down for the NFC North or not.
Yeah. Yeah, I should have brought up the playoff machine earlier. Maybe this is something I will do next time because I don't want to pick through games over the next few weeks.
So many results, and there's just a lot that could change because I think you're going to get into common strength of victory at some point.
Yeah. So you need them to lose another game. And look, it's very much
I needed the Bears to know what they were doing at the end of the game on Thursday.
Yeah,
so one of the things that's going to annoy the hell out of me is that we're going to talk about, there will be some national podcast or column or whatever where it's like how the Vikings eke out a win against the Cardinals, and they're not the Lions. Part of what's annoying is every time the Vikings get brought up, they have to be compared against the Lions. Nobody else in the NFL has to get compared against the Lions.
Correct.
But the Vikings have to get compared against the Lions because they're 10-2 and the Lions are 11-1. And they played one game. No one remembers that game the Vikings led until there was a minute left in the game and the Lions kicked a field goal. We don't ever talk about that. It's just, let's compare what the scores against the Titans look like and the Jaguars look like. Never mind the fact that both teams needed a field goal win against the Bears and had to eke it out. Never mind that when they played on an actual field, it was a close and tight game. It's just this narrative-driven shit that drives me insane. And none of it matters, and yet here I am. I know what I'm going to listen to. When I listen to it, it's like, the Vikings, how are they doing this? Meanwhile, the Bears won a game because the other team's quarterback and coach went brain dead with 50 seconds left in the game needing a field goal. That won't be considered eking out a win. That's just, the gritty Bears, they overcame the gritty Bears. That just shows how great the Lions were, blah, 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 blah.
Yeah, Matt says, did I already miss the Bears pity segment? No, this is the first time that the game on Thanksgiving has gotten brought up. And it is funny when I hadn't thought of it through that lens, Schaef, because we've been talking about that game on Thursday through the lens of, oh my gosh, the Bears are a tire fire. Oh my gosh, the Bears had to fire Eberflus. But on the other side, there was the Detroit Lions, the team that collectively, most of us do agree is the best team in the NFL. And they were dominating early, and then they got, suddenly they're not dominating anymore, and suddenly they're not covering anymore, and suddenly the Bears
lost a lot of defensive players. It's going to be interesting because their injury luck suddenly is starting to kind of turn a little bit.
Yeah, for sure.
So,
yeah,
we'll see.
And then
they're still, I think, the best team in the NFL. I don't want to, as much as I like to talk shit about the Lions, I'm not going to pretend like they're not the best team in the NFL. And yet I'm also just annoyed by having my team compared to him endlessly, as if like there's this massive degree of separation when it's one game in the standings and it was a total of 2 points on the scoreboard. So
yeah. I was talking about this. I was talking about this with my brother, who's a Vikings fan, and obviously I've talked about it with you. And I have many other Vikings fans in my life. So if any of them ever ask me, like, why is it that the Vikings don't get that same level of respect? And I always have the same answer. So I want to ask you what you think about it. The answer is always, of course, Sam Darnold, right? Like, I personally don't buy into Sam Darnold being able to do this over the course of either 2 or 3 games on the NFC side of the bracket to make it to the Super Bowl. You've now been watching him up close for a dozen games this year. So you've seen him, the positives, you've seen the negatives. He had a couple of just great throws yesterday where it's like, oh, that's right. That's the guy that was a top 10 pick. How fair, how unfair is it for someone like me to say, look, I just don't buy into you because of Sam Darnold. And I just have to see it from him for me to believe that it's going to be something that he could actually do.
Yeah, I mean, my counter to that is basically the Lions last year had to survive against Baker Mayfield and the Bucs, and I feel like the version of this Vikings is better than that Bucs team. Yeah. And so, like, the quarterback is a huge, huge part of all of it, and yet when you surround him, when we talked about Brock Purdy a few years ago, it was never, can he win these games in the playoffs? It's, can he keep the car on the road? Look at all of these weapons. Look at the coaching staff. Look at the defense. Sam Darnold is a more talented quarterback in every single measure than Brock Purdy. The difference is he started his career with an awful organization and was handed the keys with terrible players around him and terrible coaching. He doesn't have that anymore. Yeah. He's not, I don't think he's like a top 10 quarterback, and yet his arm talent is immense. And so if he's in the right situation and doesn't make a wrong decision all the time, they have an opportunity. I mean, anyone who doesn't think that guy has an unbelievable arm, watch the catch that Aaron Jones didn't make on the drive before the Vikings game-winning one. It was the best ball I think I've seen thrown by a guy, in Sam Darnold, who has had some pretty unbelievable tosses along the sidelines for touchdowns this year. He places this thing perfectly where only Aaron Jones can get it. He made the mistake of hitting Aaron Jones in the hands in a week where Aaron Jones' hands were suspect. But, Jones got redemption. He scored on the next drive on another nice throw, not nearly as epic as that one. But the big thing to me, there's a 4th and 7 on that final drive. And the Vikings in these situations, with Kirk Cousins, the famous 4th down against the Giants where he just checks down, you just know, like with Sam Darnold, he's going to hunt for a big play. He immediately recognizes zone coverage, knows that he's going to go to Jefferson, waits for the window to just crease open, drills him on the money for a 14-year. Like it was almost picture perfect. And so I feel good about it. Like I think their team as a whole, the defense is solid. They get the most pressure in the league. Like they pressure quarterbacks better than anybody else, in part because they blitz a lot. I think that they have talent on the back end. The secondary is a little bit of a question mark, but I think they have the team that kind of mitigates the whole Sam Darnold factor. And Sam Darnold is good enough that I think that he can make throws that puts everybody in jeopardy. And at the same time, like, what are we talking about? We're talking about Jared Goff, who had 5 interceptions against Houston. He's not infallible. We're talking about Jalen Hurts, who every other week we're trying to decide, is he really good or is he just a product of a system? We're talking about Jordan Love, who just threw another back foot interception playing 500. We're talking about Geno Smith. We're talking about Kyler Murray. We're talking about Baker Mayfield, Kirk Cousins, Jaden Daniels. Like,
I
mean,
this isn't the AFC. As always,
I don't know how I have to, like, every damn time. Well, it's him, Darnold. Okay, it's Jared Goff. It's Jalen Hurts.
Yeah, he's not going up against Mahomes. It's a
collection of guys
Allen.
where you're just never that excited to put, to risk it on them. Like, it's a totally different vibe. You go to the AFC, you're talking Patrick Mahomes, Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson, Justin Herbert. Like, it is just
Russell Wilson for some reason.
Never mind. No, that one doesn't fit. Like, even their bad teams have Joe Burrow and Trevor Lawrence. Well, maybe not Trevor Lawrence for any longer. But.
Yeah, not at least maybe not the next couple of weeks. No, it's an interesting point, and what you said there about the comparison to Brock Purdy, it's like, are the Vikings the 49ers of 2 years ago. And I know that team didn't win the Super Bowl.
They think they're the Rams of 3 years ago. That's who they think they are. They think they have an opportunistic. Yeah, and that's, I mean, you have a coach in Kevin O'Connell who comes from the Sean McVay tree. It's a very big, and also, I mean, he's got connections to Shanahan too. So it's
sure.
You know, two of the bright offensive minds. It shouldn't be a surprise that he's a third. That's who they try to model themselves off of. They want to be a physically aggressive team. They don't want to be the Vikings of yesteryear where it's like a fun finesse offense, but then, oh God, you got to hold on for dear life defensively. Like they want to kick people's ass. Like it's one of the cool things about the kind of resurgence of the NFC North, even the Bears, like these have some defensive players that can like get after you. And all of these NFC North teams for the foreseeable future have a ton of assets and good players. Like, so there's a lot of talent in that division, and you have to play in that kind of style. And it reminds me of what the NFC West sort of used to be like with the 49ers and the Seahawks when they had the Legion of Boom. And, it's just like this physical grinded out fight constantly. Yeah. And I think that benefits them. Like, I think that mentality,
iron sharpens iron.
A day like today, it's like, all right, it's the Cardinals. We're just going to keep searching. And then they found the answers, and they ultimately win the game at the end.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. And to go back to put a bow before we say goodbye on the conversation from a little bit earlier, like you look at the divisions, you look at the current playoff standings, and it's good. I mean, like you're going to have two NFC North teams that are going to go on the road and probably be favorites in round one of the playoff versus the NFC West and the NFC South champs. Because right now, again, the Vikings are 10-2, the Packers are 9-3, and the Seahawks are 7-5, and the Falcons are 6-6. And so you're going to look at a champ from one of those other two divisions that's probably going to be around 500. And so, or the Lions, I should say the Lions too, just in case one of the Vikings or Packers win. But like, you're going to have one of those two teams go on the road, and they're going to be a favorite. And it's like, can they do that? This has been the best division in football all year long. Like, and you pointed out maybe some reasons earlier why maybe not fool's gold, but like they've gotten benefits of the divisions that they've played, right?
I mean, the AFC South has given a lot of wins to the NFC North.
They definitely have. And so like, is that a mirage, or are these teams as good as their records say they are? For the record, I think that these teams are as good as their records say they are, at least in comparison to the NFC West and NFC South champs.
Sure.
And so we're probably looking at, if chalk holds, Lions, Eagles, Vikings, Packers in some way, shape, or form in that second round. And a team going on the road to Detroit and a team going on the road to Philly. And it just being like, oh my gosh, like that sets up for a really great round too, if chalk holds through.
The fascinating thing to me as a fan is if the Vikings are that 5 seed, who do I want on the 1 line? Is it the Lions? Because, if you're 0-2 against them, and then you're playing them, from that third game, you want that third opportunity. Is it the Eagles? Because I think that the Lions, there's just a little extra baggage there, and maybe you match up a little better with the Eagles. Is it, if you'd rather the Lions because you're indoors versus having to go to crazy-ass Philadelphia outside? There's so many of these different factors that sort of like are going to play out over the next few weeks. It's just exciting to kind of be in this situation. And we didn't even spend a second talking about the Vikings' next opponent is Kirk Cousins and the Atlanta Falcons. That's their game next week. And normally that would have been like this whole talking point for me, but the Falcons look so bad. Yeah. And I just expect Minnesota to win that game. I'm more worried about the Bears game that comes the one after it on Monday Night Football in a series where these two stupid teams play the dumbest games imaginable.
Yes.
It's like,
especially on Monday Night Football.
Yeah, it's not because they don't have the same rivalry level. It's not Ravens Steelers in the sense that it's like, nationally people expect that it's going to be kind of a wild, weird game, but they still get there. Like it's the dumb version of Ravens Steelers, which is already a dumb football game most of the time, given how the final scores look when those two teams play. So it's just like
the dumb version. I love it.
I don't know how else to explain it because the Bears are involved, so the degree goes down at least because of that alone. But also the Vikings, when they play the Bears, love to play down to their opponent.
Yeah.
Like there's a chance that's a 6-4 game on Monday Night Football. And I'm glad we won't be doing a podcast before that game or after that game. I look forward to taking no questions after that game.
Probably for the best. Speaking of
on to Seattle.
On to Seattle. What we're going to do in terms of the podcast is we do every 3 weeks, but we are going to do 4 weeks from today instead because 3 weeks from today is Christmas week. Our schedules will be kind of up in the air. So what we are going to do is we will be back for week 17, which as I pull up the schedules of both of our teams real fast, the Cowboys. Oh, perfect, Schaef. The Cowboys will have played the Eagles the day before, so that'll be just lovely for me as we all go back to work.
Packers.
Vikings, Packers. Good Lord. So our 2 least favorite teams combined will be who we're talking about. So we will be back 4 weeks from today. And then the plan after that is every week throughout the rest of the season, we will do week 18. We will do wild card. We will do division. We will do conference championship. We'll take off the Pro Bowl week. We will not be recapping the Pro Bowl. And then we will be back to, or though I guess maybe Schaef, maybe we do come on that week so we can do a little Super Bowl preview if we want to. But we'll figure that out when we get to late January, early February. We have actually never done a Super Bowl recap because of a variety of factors in personal life. So it'll be nice to actually do one of those this year. I
won't have a massive life event around the Super Bowl. Is that what we're, for the first time in several weeks? Yeah, I should cross my fingers.
I was saying that I didn't want to say who had the massive life event, but yes, Schaef has had some pretty big life events, some sad and heartbreaking, but also some really, really cool life events as well. So or life.
Yeah,
events
Hudson's okay.
Yeah, Hudson's doing great. Hudson's doing great. So we'll have that over the course of the rest of the season. Matt says someone needs to sponsor this show to make it weekly. From your lips to God's ears, Matt. Maybe for the 2025 season.
We would love to have it. Real quickly before we go.
Yeah.
Was there anyone that has, caught your eye when you were watching this weekend? Someone impress you? Great performance? Anything like that?
Let me pull up the scores real fast just to see.
Because I want to give a shout out to a specific player on a team that never gets talked about. But
yeah, why don't you go?
I think this guy's going to be exciting.
Who's that?
Is Brock Bowers already a top tight end in this league?
Yes.
Might he be the top tight end already? Is that possible?
He's incredible, man. He is so freaking good.
And I come from this from a selfish fantasy perspective because I have him in a league and I was excited to see him this year. And I have a good friend who's a Raiders fan, and so he was talking him up as well. And then the year kind of plays out, and every time I have the Raiders on, I find it weirdly enjoyable to watch Aiden O'Connell or Gardner Minshew. It's never enjoyable to watch Desmond Ridder, but
no,
to have them just hunt for Brock Bowers because he is really good.
Dude, he's incredible.
Is so good.
Yeah, he's incredible. That's a good one.
Yeah, I don't know what the future holds for that organization. If it's Shedeur Sanders and Deion Sanders and in a tandem package to be their quarterback and coach for the foreseeable future, but whoever inherits that team and whatever quarterback gets to that place, they're gonna have Brock Bowers, and he's really damn good. Really damn good.
Yeah, he's awesome. I don't have an individual player. I will say this: I picked them to go under 500 for the first time in the Mike Tomlin era. I'm yet again wrong about the Steelers. I'm always wrong about the Steelers. I continue to be impressed by them. They won 44-38 yesterday to move to 9-3, and they can win games. What was the score of the Ravens game?
19-18.
Yeah. No, so
that.
It's they are an incredible franchise with an incredible coach, and I did not see this third act for the Russell Wilson era coming, whatever act it is for him.
I don't believe it has anything to do. He somehow is orchestrating part of it, but it's very much just that building and the culture. Who's ever there, they instill that culture. Mike Tomlin's an incredible coach.
He's ridiculous.
We always do top 5 coaches, and it's always Andy Reid, Sean McVay, blah, blah, blah.
Yep. John Harbaugh.
Someone will be like, what about Mike Tomlin?
He's closer to 8 or 9.
He's got to be up there. He's got to be on everyone's top 5. I mean, he's incredible.
And the further we get away from the what were they, the Killer Bees era, the more impressed I am just knowing wow, what a bunch of psychos that were inside of that offensive meeting room, and they won a lot of games. And I know they were compared to the Patriots, and don't compare me to the ultimate or whatever, compare me to the alternative. And we compared them too often, kind of in a rich man's version shape of the NFC North conversation from earlier. We always compare them to the Pats. When it's maybe we should have just compared them to the rest of the AFC, because what they were doing versus the rest of the AFC in that era was, and it continues to be pretty incredible. I hate them so much. God, I hate them so much. Down with the Steelers. Down with the Steelers. Schaef, what do you got coming up this week? It's going to be a busy week of news. We expect people are looking around for bowl information. What can we expect on Husker 24/7?
Well, technically, bowl information won't be out until Sunday when the playoffs gets layered
Fair.
and everything else. But we'll do our best to see if we can figure that out beforehand.
Get some scoops.
Before we get to the bowl situation, though, Nebraska has a chance to sign some prospects on Wednesday. It's early National Signing Day. If you were confused, Don't worry. You're not alone. This is new. They've moved it up. Coaches don't even go on the road anymore. It's going to get real weird. So National Signing Day, December 4th. A lot could be happening for Nebraska that day. They're certainly in position to potentially flip some players, add some players. We'll see what goes on. And then, of course, there's going to be staff changes, coaching changes, personnel changes, a portal opens. So Husker 24/7, your source for all of the news if you ever get tired of what's going on at I-80. But you shouldn't get tired of what's going on at I-80. You can support both. I know I do.
There you go. Support both. Coming up this week, we have a post-game show after the Nebraska-Michigan State game on Saturday, first conference game of the year. Jack and I, our usual Wednesday stuff, and our basketball brunch show. So we got plenty coming. If you are not a subscriber, we would love to have you at patreon.com/ID Club. At the very least, you can do this.
You don't have a signing day show? You don't have someone breaking down signing day for you?
No. We will have a Wednesday night pod. No, I imagine we'll talk about recruiting for like 5 seconds.
Wow.
Yep, indeed. Even though it is the future of the program, it is the future of the program. You can do this, though. Subscribe to the ID Club YouTube page. Do the same for the Husker 24/7 page. You can watch me show up occasionally for various hypecasts and or Sunday side sessions. Schaef, as always, we appreciate the time. Good luck to your Vikings the next 4 weeks. We will talk to you the day after the Packers game.
All right, let's do it. National Fun League.
National Fun League, Week 13. Thanks, everybody, for watching. We'll talk to you later.